The darkness in the collapsed cave was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed against my skin. The air was thick with dust and the metallic tang of my own blood, but overlying it all was the bitter, aggressive scent of lime. It was George's pheromones, flooding the small space, sharp with hostility. I was a 100% genetic match for George. In the biological hierarchy of our world, an omega like me was considered the perfect antidote for a prime alpha like him. But right now, trapped in the aftermath of a landslide, that biology felt like a curse. At a time like this, you don't forget to use your pheromones to seduce an alpha. George's voice cut through the darkness, hoarse and dripping with venom. Carl, you are truly despicable. I curled tighter into myself, my hands trembling as I pressed my jacket against the jagged wound tearing through my waist and abdomen. The blood was hot and sticky, soaking through the fabric faster than I could stem the flow. The pain was a dull roar in my ears, whispering that I might die here. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice barely audible. You won't have to smell my pheromones anymore after I die. You should be happy about that. The adrenaline that had surged when the rocks first fell was fading, leaving behind a cold, agonizing clarity. Every breath was a struggle. I tried to hold back the distress pheromones leaking from my glands, but the pain made it impossible. Within seconds, the cramped pocket of air was saturated with my scent, mingling with his lime essence. George was sitting against the opposite wall of our small prison. I couldn't see him, but I could imagine the look on his face, the tense jawline, the cold, mocking eyes. Stop pretending, George snapped. You'd better collect your disgusting pheromones immediately. It doesn't matter if you threw yourself on me to protect me earlier, or if you're releasing this scent to please me now. It's useless. He paused, and the silence that followed was heavier than the stones above us. I have taken full authority over the Sterling family business, he said, his tone icy and detached. No one can force me to maintain this marriage anymore. If we get out of here, we are dissolving the marriage tomorrow. The words hit me harder than the falling rocks. 10 years of history, washed away in a single sentence. My heart felt like a chaotic mess, beating out of rhythm. I blinked slowly in the dark, my throat tight and dry. Well, I managed to choke out. If I am still alive tomorrow, I will meet you to sign the papers. George was the biggest accident of my life. I closed my eyes, letting the memories distract me from the pain. I was 13 when I was diagnosed with high-functioning autism. Although I could pass for normal better than most, I was withdrawn, paranoid, and prone to repetitive behaviors. I remembered the doctor looking at me with pity, sighing as he told my parents, "What a pity for such a beautiful child." To the Calloway family, who had just clawed their way into high society, my condition was a dishonorable secret. I was locked away. The only people I saw were family and tutors. That was my life until the day I met George. It was a family banquet. The servants were busy and forgot to lock my door. Drawn by the sound of sweet music from the garden, I wandered out. But I didn't make it to the music. I was cornered on the first floor by a group of wealthy children. They pointed, laughed, and called me dumb and idiot. Overwhelmed, I scrambled under a large table, covering my ears. They surrounded the table, stomping their feet, yelling. My sister, Lucy, stood nearby, laughing behind her hand. Then, George appeared. He wasn't as tall as he was now, but he already had that perpetual frown. "Go away," George had said. 2 words, spoken with quiet authority. The other children scattered. He knelt down, peering under the tablecloth, looking at me with confusion in his eyes. "Are you an idiot?" he asked bluntly. "You were being bullied and didn't call for help." I looked at his beautiful eyes and nodded solemnly. "Well, I'm an idiot because my parents and sister said so." George laughed, but it wasn't a mean laugh. He reached out and rubbed the top of my hair, his touch firm but gentle. "No one admits they are stupid. If you can say it, you aren't stupid." That day, amidst the fear, I imprinted on George. He was the only person who had ever been patient with me. Later, my therapist asked me, "How do you feel about George?" I thought seriously for a while. "I like him. Do you like your parents and sister?" I blinked and said no. I only like George. From then on, George came to see me often. He complained that he was annoyed by his family arranging meetings with different omegas, and that I was a quiet beta, or so he thought, who made him feel at ease. Since I hadn't presented yet, Everyone assumed I was a beta. George was a prime alpha, the heir to the Sterling Empire. My parents were thrilled he was visiting. They would push my sister, Lucy, toward him. Master Sterling, our Lucy is an omega, my mother would say, shoving Lucy forward in a frilly dress. It's better for you to play together. George wouldn't even look at her. I'm here to see Carl. George hated being controlled. He hid from Lucy and came to the attic to watch me paint. I like to paint the moon. Only the moon. Carl, you are weird, he said once, watching me brush silver paint onto the canvas in the dark, lit only by a candle. But we have our own moon here. I reached out and touched his face. I couldn't tell if the light on his features was candlelight or moonlight, but I thought he was beautiful. He froze, his eyes darkening. Your reaction is weird, he whispered, but he didn't pull away. He didn't know about my illness. He just thought I was eccentric. The strangest thing happened on the 461st day we met. I suddenly developed a high fever. The scent of lime exploded from my body. I had presented as an omega. George smelled it instantly. His eyes turned scarlet, his muscles trembling as he fought his own biology. Even you, he gritted out through clenched teeth. Even you are one of them. He rushed out of the door and didn't come back. Lying in the cave, the memory faded, replaced by the sharp agony in my abdomen. The silence was broken by a low groan from George. George, I whispered, shivering from blood loss and shock. Can you release some pheromones for me to smell? Just a little bit would be enough. Because we were a 100% match, his pheromones were a natural painkiller for me. Why? George's voice was deep, dripping with sarcasm. Didn't you bring the shirts or ties you stole from me? Smell those. I bit my lip, shame flooding my face. He knew. He knew I stole his shirts to comfort myself. Being an unmarked omega married to an alpha who refused to touch him was physiologically painful. It felt like my heart was wrapped in barbed wire. So, I would steal his worn shirts and hide in the bathroom, inhaling his scent until the loneliness subsided. I will return the tie. I whispered. Don't bother. Throw it away, he snapped. Suddenly, the ground shook. A mechanical roar vibrated through the rocks. Rescue. The heavy machinery shifted the debris, and fresh air rushed in. George stood up, dusting himself off. He looked at me, then at the entrance. A bunch of idiots, he muttered. This mountain soil is soft. It was bound to collapse. He looked back at me, his expression cold. The Calloway family is responsible for this project. Did you know that? I didn't answer. Your family cut corners on the reinforcement materials to skim money, George continued, his voice lethal. I brought you here today to show you exactly what kind of people your family are. And when I signed the marriage contract, I told my father that anyone who uses an omega to entrap an alpha is a beast. He sneered. And a beast doesn't deserve my cooperation. A beast. It was the second time I had heard that word in relation to us. The first was the night we were married. My mother had pushed me toward a locked room. George is inside. He's in a rut, a volatile cycle. He could die if he stays alone. Your pheromones can save him. Go. I went in because I wanted to save him. I didn't know it was a trap. The room was dark, filled with the terrifying, suffocating pressure of a prime alpha losing control. George was in the corner, wearing a bite guard, his eyes blood red. He looked at me like a lion looks at a gazelle. Is this your purpose? He had growled, pinning me down. You want to make me a beast? Then I'll let you get what you want. He didn't make love to me. He punished me. He marked me, biting into the glands on my neck with a violence that left scars. Since then, he hated me. He thought I was a co-conspirator. Hey, over here. A voice shouted from outside. A beam of white light cut through the darkness of the cave. I won't bother you this time. I whispered to George, my consciousness slipping away. George, I don't want you this time. What did you say? George asked, turning back, but his words were drowned out by the rescuers. I closed my eyes. Oh my God, why is there so much blood? Someone is injured. Get the medic. George squinted against the sudden light. A rescuer threw a blanket over him. Sir, are you okay? I'm fine, George said, brushing the man aside. Where is he? The omega trapped with you? The rescuer's face was pale. He's in critical condition. George froze. He turned back to the cave entrance. Medics were swarming around a figure on the ground. Carl. George walked forward, his steps unsteady. Carl, get up. Stop acting. No one answered. He pushed through the nurses. Carl was lying in a pool of blood. His face was porcelain white, devoid of life. A single tear had dried on his cheek. His shirt was soaked crimson. "He's in shock," a doctor shouted. "We need to airlift him now." "Impossible," George muttered, a ringing sound filling his ears. He was fine. He was talking to me. Talking. The doctor looked at George with disbelief. His waist was crushed by a falling rock. "He's been bleeding out for hours." The memory hit George like a physical blow. The landslide. The rock falling toward his own head. Carl jumping. Carl knocking him out of the way. It wasn't a clumsy fall, George realized, his breath hitching. "He took the hit for me. Call the helicopter." George screamed, grabbing his assistant's collar. On the helicopter, the noise was deafening, but all George could hear was the drip, drip, drip of blood falling from the stretcher onto the metal floor. He stared at Carl's pale face under the oxygen mask. He remembered the vile things he had said in the cave. Asterisk, "You're pretending. You're disgusting. You're a beast." Asterisk, Carl hadn't cried out. He hadn't complained. He had just asked, quietly, for a little bit of comfort pheromones. And George had told him to smell a dirty shirt. "Is he in pain?" George asked the doctor, his voice trembling. "Of course he's in pain," the doctor snapped. The adrenaline masked it at first, but for the last hour? It must have been excruciating. George put his head in his hands. He had slapped himself, hard. He didn't know. He truly didn't know. When he wakes up, George thought frantically, asterisk, "I will apologize. I will treat him better. I will hire a nutritionist. I will never say a harsh word again." Asterisk, the heart monitor let out a sharp, continuous whine. A flat line. I was dreaming. A long, 10-year dream. I was back under the table. George was there, but he was standing with his sister and my parents, laughing at me. "You should be lucky you are an Omega," my mother hissed, pulling me out. "You are valuable only because you match the sterling air." The scene shifted. I was running through fog, holding the divorce agreement. "Carl." George's voice echoed from all directions. "I regret it. Don't leave." "No," I said to the fog. "You can't regret it. I am finally free." I ran faster, but I tripped. A sharp pain shot through my waist, dragging me back to the waking world. "Carl? Carl, you're awake." It was George. His voice was hoarse, desperate. I opened my eyes slowly. I was in a hospital room. George was leaning over me, looking unkempt, stubble on his chin, wearing the same dirty suit from the cave. "Doctor." "He's awake," George yelled, then turned back to me, whispering, "Don't be afraid. I'm releasing pheromones. You'll feel better soon." I sniffed the air. "Nothing. I can't smell anything," I rasped. "What?" George looked confused. A doctor rushed in. "Mr. Sterling, please step back." After a flurry of checks, the doctor looked grave. "Mr. Sterling, the patient has suffered hemorrhagic damage to the glands." "What does that mean?" George demanded. "It means his glands are destroyed," the doctor said quietly. "He can no longer produce pheromones, and he can no longer detect them. He has effectively reverted to being a beta." I lay there, staring at the ceiling. A beta. No more heat. No more dependency on George. "That's good," I whispered. "No." George slammed his hand on the table. "Test him again." "That's impossible. The results are clear," the doctor said firmly. "He may never recover." That night, George stayed by my bed. He didn't sleep. I woke up in pain in the middle of the night. George immediately handed me water and painkillers. His hands were shaking. "I'm sorry," he wept, tears falling onto his hands. "Carl, I'm so sorry. Let's start over, okay?" I turned my head away. "I swear I won't be cruel," he babbled. "I'll hold an art exhibition for you. We can go anywhere you want. Just say something to me. Scold me. Please." I remained silent. He was acting like the old George, the one who saved me under the table. But it was too late. The next day, Lucy came. She waltzed into the room, heavy makeup masking her cruelty, releasing her pheromones in waves toward George. "Mr. Sterling," she purred, ignoring me completely. "Now that Carl is broken, you can consider me. I'm an Omega. I smell good." George looked at her with a terrifying calmness. "Get out." "Mr. Sterling, please," she giggled, reaching for his arm. "You don't want to be stuck with a fool for the rest of your life. Throw her out." George commanded the bodyguards at the door. As they dragged her away, Lucy screamed. You think you're so high and mighty. You don't even know the truth. Carl isn't the one who tricked you. My mother set it all up. She told Carl you were dying. He went into that room to save you, you idiot." George froze. The room went deadly silent. "What did you say?" George whispered. "We all thought he would die in there." Lucy laughed maniacally as she was hauled down the hall. "But the idiot survived." George turned to me slowly, like a rusted machine. His face was drained of color. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice breaking. You came in to save me." I looked at him calmly. "Yes. My mother said you would die if I didn't." George fell to his knees. He buried his face in the mattress near my hand, sobbing uncontrollably. He had spent years punishing me for a crime I didn't commit, for an act of sacrifice I had made for him. The next day, a lawyer arrived. George had gathered evidence. The Calloway family, my parents and Lucy, were arrested for fraud, embezzlement, and endangerment. They were going to prison for a long time. George didn't visit for 2 days. The nurses whispered that he had gone to his father, taken a beating for the financial loss caused by arresting the Calloways, and formally severed ties with his family's corrupt practices. When he returned, his face was bruised. "No one will bully you anymore, Carl," he said softly. "I want a divorce," I said. George flinched. "No, anything but that." A few days later, a woman visited me. She was elegant, but looked incredibly sad. "Hello, Carl," she said. "I am George's mother." I was surprised. George never spoke of her. "I came to tell you about why George is the way he is," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I was forced to marry his father. It was a pheromone trap, just like he thought yours was. I hated his father, and I took it out on George. I was a terrible mother. I taught him to hate omegas." She took my hand. "I am dying of cancer. Please, forgive him. He loves you. He is in so much pain." I pulled my hand away. "You are dying. That is sad. But it has nothing to do with me. If you are sorry, tell him. Don't ask me to fix him." She left, weeping. Outside the door, I heard George's voice. "Why did you come here?" he shouted, sounding broken. "I don't need your help. Go away." He entered the room, eyes red. "I'm sorry she bothered you. When can we divorce?" I asked again. "Never," he said, desperate. "I set up a charity foundation in your name for autistic children. I'm learning everything I can. Dr. Evans told me how to help you." "Dr. Evans?" I frowned. "My childhood therapist." "Yes. She told me you were like a pearl in a clamshell. Hard to reach, but precious." He knelt by my wheelchair. "Carl, please. Can we go back to how it was?" I lifted my hospital gown, revealing the jagged, ugly scar on my waist. "The scar is there forever," I said. "We can never go back." George stared at the scar, his hands trembling as he reached out, but didn't dare touch it. "I didn't know. You said you wanted a divorce in the cave," I reminded him. "You should keep your word." He hugged me then, burying his face in my neck, begging, "Don't leave me." I sat stiffly, feeling nothing. He stalled the divorce for weeks. Then his rut came. Because he had severed ties with his family and was under immense stress, this cycle was violent. He locked himself in our villa. I went to see him, not to help, but to end it. The master bedroom was a wreck. George had dug out all my old clothes, building a nest. He was lying in the center of it, clutching a sweater, inhaling desperately. "Carl," he wheezed when he saw me. "Hug me, please." I stood over him, holding a syringe of suppressants. "I have no pheromones now. You have to take the medicine." "No medicine," he cried, reaching for me. "Just you. You have to pay a price if you want relief," I said coldly. "Anything," he sobbed. "Anything but divorce." I dropped the syringe. Smash. I rolled my wheelchair over the broken glass, leaning down. "George, do you remember when you smashed my suppressants? When you laughed at me?" He looked up, eyes scarlet with fever and grief. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "if you hate being controlled by pheromones so much, why don't you just remove your glands? If you were a beta, you wouldn't be a beast. You wouldn't have an excuse." George froze. He looked at me, clarity piercing the haze of his lust. "I hate you," I said. George finally signed the papers. He let me go. I left on a sunny morning. I took nothing but my dog, Bean, and my painting supplies. I threw away my phone and moved to a city far away. I found a job as an illustrator. I rented a small apartment. Life became calm, but strange things started happening. I won a lottery at the convenience store, a new air conditioner, then a microwave. The store manager said I was the lucky 888th customer. The restaurant near my work started putting expensive Wagyu beef and prawns in my takeout rice bowls, claiming it was a loyalty bonus. On nights when the power went out, fireworks would explode over the building opposite mine, lighting up the dark so I wouldn't be scared. I knew it was him, but I pretended not to know. Winter came. My scar ached in the cold. The publishing house announced a free executive physical exam for employees. I went, and the doctor, at a private, expensive hospital, gave me bags of expensive medicine and scar cream for free. Company benefits, they said. I took the medicine, but I still caught a cold. One night, shivering in a cheap infusion clinic, I fell asleep hooked 2 and 4. When I woke up, I was leaning against someone warm. A shoulder. Who was that? I asked the nurse, looking at the empty seat beside me. A tall man, she said. He held you for 2 hours so you wouldn't tip over. I walked out into the snow. A taxi pulled up. Free ride, the driver yelled. Someone paid for you. Was it George? I asked. The driver hesitated. A guy in a black coat. He paid me $100. I started running. Carl, stop running. I heard him behind me. The heavy boots crunching on snow. I slipped on a patch of ice. Pain exploded in my waist. George was there instantly, scooping me up. Let me go, I screamed, thrashing in his arms. Go away. You are disgusting. Why do you keep pestering me? He set me down gently on the dry steps of my building and backed away, hands raised. I'm sorry, he panted, his breath pluming in the cold air. Stay away from me, I yelled, limping into the building. I locked the door and slid down to the floor, hugging Bean. Carl. George's voice came through the door. I looked through the peephole. He was standing there, snow melting on his shoulders. My mother died yesterday, he said softly. I don't have a mother anymore. I gripped the doorknob but didn't open it. I only have you, Carl, he whispered. You can hate me, but please don't drive me away. Don't hide from me. He turned around, putting his back to the door. He lowered the collar of his coat. Look, Carl. I listened to you. On the back of his neck, where his alpha glands should have been, there was a hideous, jagged scar. My breath hitched. He had done it. He had surgically removed his glands. He was no longer an alpha. He had mutilated himself to prove he wasn't a beast. I nearly died, he said conversationally to the closed door. I was in a coma for 3 months. I dreamed of you every day. When I woke up, I realized. If you don't forgive me, that's fine. I just want to watch over you. You arranged the lottery prizes, I said through the wood. Yes. And the Wagyu beef. Yes. You look too thin. And the fireworks. You're afraid of the dark. I felt tears sliding down my face. I opened the door. George turned around. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes were clear. You're an idiot, I said, crying. You removed your glands? Are you crazy? Yes, he smiled weakly. Crazy about you. He stepped forward, hesitant. Can I stay? I won't force you. I just want to be near you. I looked at the snow falling behind him. I looked at the scar on his neck, the proof of his penance. The winter was cold, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. Come in, I whispered. It's cold outside. He stepped inside, bringing the scent of snow and a new, clean silence with him. I closed the door against the wind.